There has been a great deal of legal and political analysis regarding FBI Director James Comey and his agency's investigation into Hillary Clinton's email practices and their decision yesterday. Joining us now from Nashville to give his take, Alberto Gonzales, the former U.S. Attorney General under George W. Bush. Mr. Attorney General, good to have you. James Comey was your deputy when you were Attorney General. Just give us a quick assessment of him as a lawyer, an investigator, and in terms of his ethics and prudence.
Well, that's a lot there. I can't really speak to his investigative skills because obviously, as a Deputy Attorney General, that's not your job, is to do investigations. Your job is to make charging decisions and decisions relating to prosecutions. But listen, I know Jim is a hard worker, and I honor his service. He's obviously contributed most of his professional life in the service of his country.
Right. You don't have any sense that you never had any sense that he has any kind of a political motivation in terms of how he handles his business as a lawyer, right?
No, but I think what's going on with respect to his press conference yesterday really relates to perhaps his judgment. And I was really surprised by the comment he made that no reasonable prosecutor would charge this case, because that is not his job, is to make that kind of assessment. His job as FBI director is to do an investigation and present the evidence to the prosecutors, in this case, ultimately the Attorney General of the United States. And I think by making that statement, what he's really doing is challenging anyone who disagrees with him and accusing them of being unreasonable. And so if the Attorney General of the United States decides that she wants to go ahead and prosecute this case, I think what he has said is that would be unreasonable, and I think that's unfortunate. And so that's the thing that really troubled me about yesterday's press conference. I can't speak as to whether or not Jim's judgment is right on the evidence, because I haven't examined the evidence. But that one statement really, I think, was really kind of interesting.
How unusual is it for someone in his position to make that kind of statement? I mean, I know you disagree with it, but do you consider it way outside of the norm in such a situation?
Yes. I mean, it's one thing. In fact, if I were the Attorney General and someone of Jim's experience was the FBI director and has done an investigation, I would quietly want to know, what do you think? Do you think there's enough here to charge? Right. But at the end of it, but that's something that would be a private conversation. For him to publicly say no reasonable prosecutor would charge this case really is an attempt, I think, to lock in the Attorney General. And I think it's very, very unfortunate.
Mr. Attorney General, I know you've said that you don't want to say whether or not you would have thought, under the circumstances, knowing the limitations on what you know about the case, whether Hillary Clinton should have been indicted or not. But what more, given the thoroughness of his press conference yesterday, Mr. Comey's that is, what more would you need to know to reach a conclusion about whether or not an indictment was warranted?
Right. I would not make this decision based upon a 15-minute press conference. I'd like to sit down with the investigators. I would like to look at what they looked at. I would like to look at the precedent, other cases, and what the department has done in previous cases and the circumstances of those kinds of cases. So there would be a lot more work that I'd want to do to feel comfortable as to what I would do with this particular case, particularly because it involves someone who's running for President of the United States. You want to get this absolutely right. So, I'd be shooting off the cuff here if I just simply said, based on what he said, this is what I would do. I don't think that's right. Right.
Let me ask you this question. One of the things that Mr. Comey leaned in really hard on was the question of intent. He basically said, that she couldn't find criminal intent or intent on Hillary Clinton's part, and because of the lack of intent, it seemed to be a big part of why he wouldn't recommend an indictment. But there are those who point to the law and say that intent really isn't necessary here, that gross negligence is the standard under some of the applicable law. What do you understand the appropriate standard to be under the laws that govern in this matter?
Right. It's going to depend on the statute that's in question, and in some cases, specific intent is required. In other cases, it is not. For example, the standard of gross negligence wouldn't necessarily require a finding of specific intent. So it's going to depend upon the upon the statutes that are being looked at. And what the Attorney General is going to be doing, or should be doing, from my perspective, is looking at those statutes and looking at the evidence presented by the FBI director and making her own independent judgment as to whether or not to move forward with the prosecution. She is not bound by what anything Jim Comey said yesterday. She is not bound by his recommendation.
Right.
Her job, discharging her oath of office, is to look to see whether or not the evidence supports the indictment in this particular case.
Let me just ask you a political question. I mean, just from the standpoint of appearances, the decision of Director Comey to come forward with this decision and hold this press conference on the day that Hillary Clinton was first hitting the campaign trail with President Obama, that has come under some question from a variety of different sources. Just put us in the mind of James Comey. What would make the FBI director decide to do this on a day when he knew that that event was happening with Secretary Clinton and President Obama later in the day? And do you think that was inappropriate?
Well, I don't think that affected his decision. Again, I don't know the factors that Mr. Comey weighed in deciding that yesterday was a day that he was going to make this announcement, quite frankly. What I find a little bit surprising and what is very unique is for the FBI director to have a public press conference and announce the findings of an investigation before even making a recommendation to the Attorney General, because I think he indicated that no one outside of himself knew what he was going to say, which tells me that he had not even told the Attorney General of his recommendation. That is very unusual for him to publicly inform the world. This is what my recommendation is going to be, without informing his boss. So that I find very unique and unusual, and I'd be very interested in terms of why he felt that he had to do that. But I can't think of a reason that why the announcement yesterday was in any way affected by the fact that Hillary Clinton was going to be campaigning with President Obama.
Right, but do you not think that, I mean, given that he knew that that event was happening, I mean, would you say yes or no that it was maybe politically imprudent just because of some of the questions and suspicions it might raise? Was it not politically imprudent maybe to have it on that date?
No, it could be that Mr. Comey believed that he had made the decision. He knew what he was going to be recommending, and he wanted to get it out there as quickly as possible, as far away as possible from the convention, as far away as possible from the election. And it was simply a situation he was ready to go, and he wanted to make the announcement.